Hello everyone, this is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Finding Astral Allies. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support this channel and its work on Patreon, you can do so. When you join, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth, and now there's a new chat room for Patreon members as well. If you're interested, there is a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson to learn how to astral project, all you have to do is go to the description section and just send me an email requesting more information, and I'll forward that to you. We all know that on the astral, there are many levels, many planes and subplanes, and there's a wide variety of creatures, a wide variety of intelligences, with a wide variety of abilities. For instance, there's nature spirits. They tend to be attracted to deep forests, places where things are growing. I don't have a lot of affinity for them. Quite frankly, they've always seemed kind of flighty to me. So I never really spent a lot of time trying to get to communicate with them. I imagine perhaps if you're a real plant person and that's really your world, then perhaps you'd have some luck. But they're just too scattered for my tastes. There's also things like elemental entities, elemental spirits. These tend to be found in storms, for instance, or in windy areas somewhere, or where the ocean is crashing against the beach. These entities exist, and they have a certain level of intelligence. If I know there are some folks who have made friends with them, and they've been able to assist, their person in some minor weather situations. But once again, I find their intelligence, it's something that it's hard, I find, to communicate with. They're just, they're fired up. They're always at 110%, and they lose interest very quickly. So it's just not my cup of tea. I mean, I have had some interactions with some wind and fire elementals, but it's just, we just didn't click. Of course, there's also the angel guides, which I have talked about. I have mine, for instance, and, we've established a pretty good relationship. I like to think of him definitely as an ally. And I'll explain that term in a little bit more detail soon as to what exactly I typically mean by it. But he has a very strict set of moral codes. He's restricted in his actions to a great degree, which, fine, I respect. But when you ask for help from that area, imagine asking for help from a very judgmental parent. You see what I mean? It's the kind of thing where even if you could get help from them, you're very reticent, very reluctant to ask for that help because of the judgmental situations that come along with it. They're going to tear apart your motives and look at every particle. So it's just, you'd rather not get them involved. There's also, of course, my pride, which I have mentioned on numerous occasions. I don't like asking for help to begin with. So asking for help from someone who's going to, give me the old 20 questions and look into the purity of my motives constantly. I like to think of myself as a pretty noble individual who has a sense of honor. But I'm not perfect. I'm just a human. And I always seem to come up a little bit short, at least, when it comes to dealing with my angel guide, and he's one of the nicer ones. Some of the other ones out there are like the sternest, most judgmental parent that you've ever encountered in your life. So, whereas I do assist my angel from time to time, I don't request a lot from him. So, what am I talking about in this particular episode? Well, I use the word allies for this group that I'm going to describe to you because there really is no other word for them that I've ever encountered. I get the word from the Carlos Castaneda books. He uses allies, that term, to describe the non-human forces that worked with him to create his reality. I gave these beings that name because it seems to me to be the closest that I can get to what they are. They remind me of some of the encounters that Carlos had, for instance. They also remind me a little bit of the creatures, the entities that are seen by people who smoke salvia. Now, I've never personally smoked salvia because it's illegal in my state and I'm much too pretty to go to prison. But I have talked to people who have smoked salvia, and I certainly have read a lot online of reports of people who've had these journeys and the creatures, the entities that they met in the process. These entities are very non-human. And so I'm reminded of my allies when I read about these particular creatures. I first encountered them, I would say I was in college, so it had to be all of 40 years ago. And I was doing quite a large amount of projections during that period of time. You know, it just seemed like every night I had multiple projections. So I just did an awful lot of exploring in planes and, of course, in time and space. But I remember one particular trip. I remember I had read a book somewhere where somebody was talking about some astral friends he had, and I guess I got a little jealous because I didn't really have any. I guess I had astral acquaintances, but none that I could call friends or allies. So I had that in mind while I was traveling in the mid-astral, thinking to myself, I wonder if there are any other non-ordinary realities that are separate from this reality, this physical and this astral reality that I was in, something that was apart. Like I said, I was also reading the Castaneda books at the same time, so that probably got me thinking in that area. Now, I just want to give you a warning right now. I'm going to describe what I experienced, but I'm going to leave some things out because these entities are extraordinarily powerful, and since they're unlike us, they can't be trusted to discard certain requests. So the individual who is allied with them has to be extraordinarily careful and have a very clear sense of what is right and wrong and honor. Because if they fell in with the wrong human, it could go very badly. And so I want to make sure that anyone who encounters these beings is ready. And the only way to get ready is to discover some of the things that I'm leaving out. I apologize, but it's something I have to do because I don't want to be responsible if the wrong person falls into this plane. So I went looking for this plane, and it appeared to me to be a flat black plane with no width to it. So I flew over it for a while, and then I finally went to one of the corners, and I thought about, I wonder if it's possible to get in there. And before you knew it, I was being squeezed in to this odd flat plane. I felt like somebody was turned into spaghetti and was being, hand cranked into spaghetti noodles. When I guess, reassembled, when I regained my consciousness, I found myself in this very odd space. It was white, I would say, but it had streaks of color all through it. I could feel that there was intelligence around me, but I couldn't locate a particular area where the intelligence was coming from. And the intelligence was something, especially for me back then, was completely outside of my area of human experience. I could sense thought, but it didn't go in ordinary ways. It was, instead of logic from point to point to point, it was everywhere all at once, and then it wasn't, and then it switched, and it's almost impossible to describe. For a second, I thought about getting out. I'll be honest, because I was feeling a little bit of fear. But as always, my curiosity trumped my fear. So I sent out a signal requesting contact. I felt like it bounced around and got nowhere. Then I decided to repackage it and put it into, imagine a sentence, an English sentence where I, Rick, request contact with someone on this plane. Imagine me taking that sentence and disassembling it in every possible way, and then reassembling it in every possible way and sending it out. Hopefully that makes some sense. Only then did I get a reply. And the entity that appeared before me appeared in a roughly humanoid shape. It was very, how do I put it? It looked like it came out of the white plane. The atmosphere was white, but it also had these streaks of color in it, constantly shifting in some sort of a chaotic pattern, which, when I use the word pattern, I'm lying already, because I doubt there was any pattern that I'd be able to make out. And I tried to project my thoughts to this being. Keep in mind, it didn't even have a face yet. As I projected my thoughts to it, I got nothing back. So I tried the same thing I tried before, which was I tried taking apart the sentence and then spitting it back in a million different orders. Then I saw that the entity started taking on some human aspect, with some eyes and a nose and a mouth. But the eyes were black, so I couldn't see anything other than that. And then I got this response, which sounded in my head like there was echoes. Every word echoed. And it wanted to know what I was. I said that I am a human from another plane. It thought about that for a bit. I could tell it was somehow thinking that over. And then it came back to me and it said, yes, we see you. We see your light. That didn't mean much to me at the time. So I asked, what do you mean you see my light? It thought about that for a minute. And it sent me a visual of how it saw humanity, because it understood what I was at that point. Imagine a flat plane of Earth. I know there's folks out there who think the Earth is flat. Well, in this case, in the mind of these beings, the Earth was a flat plane, and on it were masses of stick figures. That's how we appeared to them, stick figures. Although there was a few that were balls of light. And those are the ones that they noticed. The only reason they replied to me is because I evidently had this ball of light. And it was most probably because I had been astral projecting for so long. So that's probably why, I had that ball of light. So that's the only reason they even came to talk with me. Because from their standpoint, and all of this is difficult to put into English because, once again, I'm trying to make sense in our logical way, something that has no logic to it. They're aware of us, but we're not important. They can see our paths if they so choose, but we're stick figures to them. So how interested would you be if all you saw was a mass of stick figures, running around on a flat piece of paper? Once you got over the novelty of, oh, isn't this weird? It'd be quite boring to you. And that's how they thought about it. But they also saw what we would term as our future, because they could see the paths that the stick figures were making. They could see it before they did it. Now, for them, it was one long scene. It wasn't separated into past, presents, and futures because they didn't recognize that. More than that, if they so choose, or if they so chose, they could alter the path of any particular stick figure if they cared enough, which they generally do not. I was intrigued by all of this. Then they started asking me lots of questions. I guess I intrigued them to some extent, at least for that period of time. They wanted to know more about these humans. I said, well, we're the dominant life form on our planet Earth. I explained to them how we organize ourselves, talked to them about our emotions, love, hate, which was, of course, alien to them. They had no clue. And I know that whatever it is I told them, it wasn't sufficient. How do you describe love and hate to a being that is so alien that has no concept of human emotions or emotions of any sort? But I did my best. They wanted to know more about why we do what we do. They tried to make sense. I got a feeling that this one was a little bit more interested in humans than most. They said, or I can say they or he, it's pretty much the same thing. They said that they have watched us, but our motions didn't make a lot of sense. So they didn't spend a lot of time watching us. But I know the one thing that they were really interested in when I started talking about it was the concept of good and evil, the concept of right and wrong. They were fascinated by the topic. I spent a lot of time trying to explain to them how you can tell the difference, what it is, why it's important to humans to make decisions that help others and not just themselves. And I spent, I guess, a good amount of time answering their questions. I don't know how much time, because time was different on that plane, very different. When I was done, the entity asked if I would like to become a part of their collective. I was a little surprised at that, but I remembered that I was looking for allies. I was looking for friends. And these entities seemed like a pretty interesting group. And perhaps I could learn from them. They could learn from me. I asked what that entailed. And he said, well, just allow us to meld into your mind and we will meld you with ours. That gave me some pause. But I thought, listen, Rick, you wanted friends, you wanted allies. You know, when here on Earth, when we make allies, we have to take risks, right? We have to trust. We have to sign agreements and hope that the other side is going to keep them and that you don't get betrayed. So this is what I wanted, right? I did lower my barriers and we did meld. And my mind was opened to an existence which I could never fully explain, because I've done my poor best already, and it's woefully inadequate. The English language, hell, human thought is woefully inadequate to the task. But I saw everything, and I saw how they saw us. They were the dominant life form on this plane. In fact, I think they were the only life form on this plane. One of the things they were interested in was all of these other life forms they saw running around. They weren't as interested in the other life forms because they didn't have balls of light around them. And it's the balls of light that attract these beings. I guess they're kind of like, I don't know, like insects attracted to a forest fire or a campfire in the middle of the woods. That's what attracts them. So, I did my best to explain to them, everything I knew about life on Earth and all these different life forms and how they weren't quite as intelligent as us, but they also had their beingness. There was a lot more that I had to explain. But after that, they said that, okay, we are now joined and you can call upon us whenever you need our assistance. And it really was as simple as that. And I replied the same, and they acknowledged that. But I had the feeling that they were happy with what they'd learned so far, but they were more than willing to assist me. So with that, I bade them farewell and returned to the ordinary astral space. I had to go through the reverse spaghettification, which is a very, I don't want to say unpleasant, but I want to say uncomfortable feeling. And then I assembled in our astral world and returned to my body. Since that time, in those 40 years, I could probably count on my fingers and my toes the number of times that I've asked assistance from them. And that assistance had no particular limits, which is why I left out some vital information here, because they have a hard time grasping what's right and wrong. So whatever you ask, they will do. As a matter of fact, my wife can back this up. They have responded to me and granted my requests 100% of the time. But keep in mind my personality. I don't believe in abusing any particular gift. And I consider this a great gift. So in 40 years, maybe 20 requests, all of which have been fulfilled. So that is how you can get some astral allies. If you are more interested in the airy fairies, they're out there. If you want to try to corral some of those big wind elementals, hey, good luck to you. I'm very happy with these particular beings that I call allies. Well, if you enjoyed that, please hit the like button. Share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm sure you must have some questions. Please ask, and I will do my poor best to answer them. Because, like I said before, it's very difficult using English in times like this. It's very frustrating because it's a clumsy language. Not to say that most other human languages aren't that much better, but it's what I got to work with. At any rate, I'd love to hear from you. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.